Everybody, welcome to A Walk in the Park, a retreat from the ordinary. I'm Paige Cruz, Parks and Recreation Superintendent and your host. We've got a great show lined up. Baseball season is right around the corner, so we're talking with Dale Nichols to learn how you and your children can get involved. Then we'll pitch things to Kevin Lewis and see what it takes to keep those ball fields maintained. After that, we're counting down to the Battle of Franklin's 150th anniversary. Historian Thomas Flegel takes us to Winstead Hill for a walking history lesson. Then City Arborist Todd Snackenberg is at Pinkerton Park for a preview of a big event coming up in April. Stay with us.
Wilson on the carry.
Are you ready for baseball season? Well, it's almost here. There's a good chance you'll be one of the many folks enjoying America's pastime at our great parks. And here today with me is Dale Nichols. Welcome, Dale.
Thank you, Paige.
Thank you for joining us today. Just want you to talk a little bit about what's going on with Franklin Baseball Club.
Well, Franklin Baseball, as you know, has been around for, over 30 years. And this year, for our spring season, we'll have about 100 teams and about 1,200 players. The majority of those will be rec players, or what we would consider non-club initiated type of players, but we also have those types of higher level recreational or travel teams with it too.
I know one of the questions that most folks may have, are there still spots available, or can people still sign up, or are we at a point we're full?
There's probably still some spots available. They can contact the Franklin Baseball Club. They'll potentially have to get put on a waiting list. The season will start for us at the end of March, so first part of April the season will start, and we'll run all the way through to about the end of June at that point in time. So it really just depends on your age and what ability you are.
And I know you guys play at Jim Warren Park, and you also play at Liberty Park. So can you kind of tell us a little bit as far as tournaments go and who plays where, or at each of those parks, and how that kind of works? Right.
Liberty Park primarily is what we would consider more for our upper level, our travel teams, and we also play a lot of tournaments out there. Our facilities are pretty good, so we're pretty proud of that. And so the news is out, so we'll be hosting, the Franklin Baseball Club will be hosting 6 tournaments this year. Everything from state tournaments to the Cal Ripken tournament. Last year we hosted a regional Cal Ripken tournament, which is kind of a big deal for this area, so we're pretty proud about that. At Jim Warren Park we have our 4 through 6 ages down on some of the smaller fields, and then some of the larger fields up more by the football complex will be more of your 13 through 18 groups.
And kind of tell us a little bit about, how you guys do sponsorships. Is that an opportunity that people can take advantage of? Or are you still taking sponsors for certain teams, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's right. We are a 501c3, so we're a nonprofit organization. So while we do work in concert with the City of Franklin for facilities and fields and those types of things, everything else we do is either funded through entry fees or through sponsorship. So again, if the community wants to get involved, and they typically do in a large venue for us to help us out, they can certainly do that by contacting the club. Every year we probably have 50 to 60 sponsors, and that's everything from field signs to different types of programs to names on uniforms and things like that.
And just, I guess, tell us a little bit about specifically your role with Franklin Baseball, and kind of, I know what that role is, but let's tell everyone else what that role is.
Well, I head up the facility, so I'm the liaison with the Parks Department with you, and also to work at the different facilities. So I have that interesting job when it starts to rain or when it's 32 degrees to coordinate with your staff, who I know works extremely hard to get those fields ready and prepared for us, and coordinate that with the Franklin Baseball Club to make sure that our coaches and our administration are doing the right thing. One of the largest things we obviously face, as you well know, is maintaining our facilities at a high quality level and not overusing them given the amount of teams. On any given weekend, we're probably playing close to 120, 130 games on those fields each and every weekend.
And kind of, I guess, and speaking of tournaments, is there hopes of adding more tournaments this season? I know you mentioned 5. I know, are the types of tournaments that we host, are you guys looking to do even on a bigger scale or add to that those tournaments this year, or what's kind of the hope there for the future?
I think that's always a fine balance for us. The Franklin Baseball Club has always been a very rec-oriented club, so while we do have some very competitive teams at some of the highest levels, I think out of our 8 travel teams last year, we won 3 state championships, and the other 4 or 5 probably were in the top 5 in the state. So we definitely have that aspect, and tournament play is part of that. But we're much more focused on the 1,000 or so recreational players that kind of come up through our league. We'll continue to add tournaments as we have space available and time available to do those. We kind of feel like we're hosting some of the large ones. We're hosting the BPA State Championship, which will be one of the largest tournaments in the state of Tennessee. Our Memorial Day tournament, that's been a traditional FBC thing, we'll have probably 150 teams this year, 160 teams. So that's one of the largest tournaments that go on in Middle Tennessee. And of course, all the work that we do with Cal Ripken, either through the state tournaments or again the regional tournament that we hosted last year, those are important to us, but we also want to balance that with the field usage and the types of things that we do for that recreational player.
And I know, Dale, one of the tournaments we hosted last year that was a highlight to everyone was the regionals that we hosted. If you will, just talk a little bit about how many teams were there, where they were from,
we had, I think we had 16 teams. They were all primarily from the Southeast. It was Southeast Regional Tournament. We actually did have a team from Freeport, Bahamas, oddly enough, which was kind of an interesting thing that they would travel that far to play baseball. So you had a lot of teams from Florida, a lot of teams from Georgia, obviously teams from Tennessee and that surrounding area. So, and that lasted 4 or 5 days. Hosted here at our facility, and it was a great time, and we'll continue to get those types of tournaments based on how we performed and how we ran that tournament, and also the quality of fields and stuff that we have here in Franklin.
Great. And I know, as you mentioned earlier, we've got our opening day coming up. It's the end of March, and which will be going every Saturday through end of June, I guess.
That's right.
Anything else you would like to add today as far as, kind of what's going on with you guys as far as, or what you need from Parks as far as fields go? I know we talk on a daily basis, but projects we're doing and things we're trying to do to improve the fields for you guys. So.
Well, I think we're very fortunate to have good facilities. I know you guys spend a lot of time, and your crew and the athletics crew, they spend a lot of time working on those fields. I don't think people really realize how much play that those fields get, how many teams, how many games, how much time that it takes to do that. I'm involved in it every day. I know you are. There are probably some people in the community that probably realize all the work that goes into that. We'll continue to manage that. I mean, we could always use more fields. I think that's through with any athletics program that we have here in Franklin. Clearly, the city's growing. And we're just going to have to continue to sort of manage the resources that we have, given the number of kids that we have and the growth that we keep experiencing in the Franklin area. But all in all, we're happy. I mean, right now I could just use 70-degree weather and some sun, and that would make us all happy.
We would all be happier.
That's right.
One of the last questions I have is, I get a lot of questions sometimes. How do you volunteer? If you want to volunteer for a tournament or for a Saturday, is that something that's possible, or is that, or how do they go about contacting FBC to do that if they want to volunteer, sign up, whether it's a school, an individual, to help out on game day or anything like that?
Right. You can definitely go to our website, which is fbcbaseball.com, and you can definitely get to there, and there's coaching opportunities, there's opportunities to help out with the teams in sort of a team mom or a team dad kind of manager role. There's always opportunities to help out, volunteer at any of these tournaments. Again, sponsorships. Again, we're a nonprofit organization. Nobody gets paid any money to administer or manage the Franklin Baseball Club. So we work really hard and work through a lot of different volunteers to do those kind of things.
And one of the last topics here I have that's a very hot one, just today in every sport there is concussions. And I know you guys are teaming up this weekend and next weekend and having a coaches clinic. And tell us a little bit about that concussion, how that's playing in baseball this year, and what's new going on with that.
Right, and as you're aware, there's some legislation in the state of Tennessee now that mandates concussion training. That pertains to baseball, pertains to all sports. So we will continue. We've always been a little bit out on the front of not only safety with our players, but we'll continue to have that concussion training. You don't see it a whole lot in baseball, but it is something that we take very serious, not only concussions, but player safety in general. So we'll have training over the next 2 weekends for all of our coaches and staff that'll go through that.
Great. Thank you, Dale, for all that information.
Glad to be here.
Now let's head out to Jim Warren Park, where we meet up with Kevin Lewis, Athletic Crew Chief, to see how our fields stay in tip-top shape.
I'm Deanna Scheffel, and I'm here today with Kevin Lewis. He is our Athletic Crew Chief, and he is going to explain to us today how he maintains the sports fields. So Kevin, why don't we start with telling us a little bit about yourself. Tell us how you came to Franklin Parks.
Well, I started school at Michigan State University. I graduated in sports turf management. I had 2 jobs in Major League Baseball with the Detroit Tigers, and then my internship for school was with the Baltimore Orioles. And then my first job out of school was in Los Angeles, California, where I worked for, it was called the Home Depot Center then, now, which is called the StubHub Center.
How did you end up here, and especially at Franklin Parks?
My wife's work relocated to Nashville, and we took that move to be closer to home. Mm-hmm. And when I moved here, I saw a posting for the city of Franklin, and I thought I'd go and see what the parks were all about. And when I came to see how nice the parks were kept, I thought that would be a great place to apply for a job.
Well, great. We love to have your expertise here. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the kind of fields that we have, the acreage, the kind of parks, or which parks are included, and just give us a little background on that.
Well, we at the athletic division, we maintain approximately 28 acres of athletic fields, and that's spread between 3 parks. We have Liberty Park, which is a baseball park. We have 3 fields at. Fieldstone Farms, which is a softball complex. We have 4 fields. And Jim Warren, which is our largest, we have 12 baseball fields, 4 football fields, and a few multi-purpose areas that we maintain.
Wow. Since you're a crew chief, it must mean you have a crew. So what kind of manpower does it take to maintain all of these parks, and what kind of training do they need to have?
We have 4 full-time athletic workers. In March to April, we usually get 2 new part-time workers. And this year we are going to get an intern, which will be the first year that we've had an intern. They have to have a background in sports fields. Mm-hmm. And so this year we'll have 8 workers.
Wow. Well, let's shift gears a little bit here since we've been talking about it. Why don't you tell us what it takes to maintain these fields? What is your maintenance plan, or what you explained to me earlier, your cultural practices?
Well, we generally get started, our season will usually start, depending on weather. In March, we'll start putting our pre-emergent down so that we don't get any weeds popping up throughout the summer. And we will fertilize 3 times a year. We try and mow 3 times a week. We mow at 1 inch, which is pretty short. It's a lot shorter than like a home lawn would be. Mm-hmm. And ours is all Bermuda grass fields. We also will aerate once a month, probably starting in April to May. Depends on weather again, and we'll aerate once a month until maybe September. In July, we generally do, that's our slow time with the baseball, they take a break, and we'll actually aerate all our fields. We verticut and we top dress. In last year, when we top dressed, we used approximately 885 tons of sand to top dress all our fields. And then in the fall, we actually come back with another pre-emergent as well, so we don't have any weeds pop up throughout the winter.
Those tons of sand fascinate me. So explain to me what top dressing is. So you're spreading sand on the fields, and what does that do?
It helps to level the field, and it helps with soil conditions of the athletic fields.
Okay. Should we be doing that at home?
Well, I would say you can. You can. It just depends on how you want your lawn to look at the house.
Okay, okay. Well, are there any other things that you do that aren't really right on the grass area? Like we're looking at this the infield right here. So what other kind of things does your crew do for the various user groups or just in general maintenance?
Well, the majority of the play is actually on the infields. Let's say in a baseball game, 90% is played on dirt. So we have two different drags that we'll drag the fields with. One, it's called a nail drag, and the other is a screen drag. And depending on field conditions, we choose from one of those. We'll drag 1 to 2 times a day, depends on how the fields are. We'll also water the infields to keep them wet, because that's one of the most important things. We also build and repair the mounds and plates after every day of use, just so that the kids it's nice and flat and safe for them to play on.
I lived in California too. I had an irrigation system at every house I owned. And I don't see that much here in Tennessee. And I know I've seen you out there digging trench lines for irrigation. Have you started instituting an irrigation plan or a program?
We currently have irrigation on most of our fields. We have, I think, 7 fields left that do not have irrigation. So within the next few years, we'll hopefully add to what we have. In the past 3 years, we've installed 3 different fields, 2 football fields, and this year we just installed a softball field at Fieldstone. So we completely put that whole system in, and then throughout the year we actually maintain them and run times, all that stuff. It's ran depending on weather. Last year was a great year that we didn't really have to use much water.
I know, because most of my events were canceled. So I understand the whole weather situation, and this is a lot more involved than I ever thought. But thank you for being here today and explaining it all to us. And thank you all for joining us. And back to you, Paige, in the studio.
Special thank you to Kevin Lewis. Keep up the great work. When we come back, we'll take you on a walking history tour at Winstead Hill and learn about a big tree event coming up at Pinkerton Park.
Good morning, Franklin. It's another beautiful day in the neighborhood. Local news is coming up next. We'll check the weather and the traffic. You have a great day out there.
say good evening, Franklin, Tennessee.
Welcome back to A Walk in the Park. This November will mark the 150th anniversary of the Battle of Franklin, one of the deadliest battles in our nation's history. Historian and author Thomas Flagel tells us more about Winstead Hill and the role it played in the Civil War.
We are standing on Winstead Hill, the iconic starting point of one of the largest assaults in the entirety of the Civil War. November 30th, 1864, John Bell Hood launched nearly 20,000 troops toward the Federal lines in Franklin, 2 miles away. But a lot of people don't realize that in 1863, the year before, this was the dividing line between the Federal lines and the Confederacy. The Union, in order to occupy this area, had to hold Franklin, and when they did, they had all citizens of a very secessionist town swear a loyalty oath to the Union. Those who didn't swear that oath were deported to this hill, to the Confederacy. One citizen who was having a hard time convincing the Union Provost Marshal of her loyalty to the Union was one Ms. Royce, particularly because her husband was serving with Nathan Bedford Forrest and his cavalry around here. In order to be safe, the Union said, "We don't believe you, you're not loyal, and we're taking you to this point in Winstead Hill and putting you in the Confederacy over that ridge." In order to make their point very clear, they went back to her house, tore it down, and turned it into barracks. I guess it's true. Sometimes you just can't go home again. The Battle of Franklin is oftentimes called the Gettysburg of the West, but if you look at the numbers, that assessment isn't necessarily true. The famed Pickett's Charge on July 3, 1863, Robert E. Lee sent 12,000 troops forward to the Union lines. Here on November 30th, 1864, John Bell Hood sent 20,000 troops. Robert E. Lee's men had to traverse a mile of open ground. As you can see, this is 2 miles to the Federal lines that John Bell Hood's men had to traverse. Indeed, Pickett's Charge, the entire battle lasted about 55 minutes. This lasted 5 hours. And as a consequence, Hood lost far more men here than Lee did on the last day of Gettysburg. In assessing the overall damage of these battles, Lee was able to fight another day after Gettysburg, another 651 days to be exact, whereas Hood, for all intents and purposes, destroyed his army here. This was the last grand assault for the Confederacy, and the last chapter in a long and painful saga. It is often said that 6 Confederate generals were killed at the Battle of Franklin, the worst subtraction the Confederacy would ever suffer during the course of the war. Well, technically, 2 were not killed in action here. They died of their wounds. What's the difference? Officially, any soldier who reaches an aid station or a field hospital before they succumb to their injuries dies of wounds. And that includes States Rights Gist, the brigadier who was able to reach a field hospital before he succumbed the night of the battle. The other one was John C. Carter, brigadier general, only 27 years of age. He survived the battle and was taken to a house south of here, the Harrison House, just over Winstead Hill. He recovered slightly and then took a turn for the worse. December 10th, 1864, he died. These 2 were not alone. Technically, officially, 83,700 men, north and south, died of their wounds during the course of the Civil War. Winstead Hill is named after Samuel Winstead, a prominent landowner here in Franklin. A member of the Winstead clan actually suffered a very common fate in the Civil War. His name was Meredith Winstead. Even before Tennessee joined the Confederacy, he joined up in the Tennessee Infantry. May 9th, 1861, Meredith joined Company D of the 1st Tennessee right here in Franklin. He had a rather prominent career. He was doing well, fought well, and went all the way up to 2nd Sergeant. But at the Battle of Perryville, October 8th, 1862 in Kentucky, he was wounded severely in the leg, and the doctors couldn't save it. They amputated. And as we know, there's at least 4 people in his regiment who suffered the same fate. 60,000 people during the Civil War had amputations. It was the most common form of surgery ever performed. Many doctors were called butchers or sawbones for amputating so often, but they knew they had to. The type of bullet at that time, the mini bullet, tended to spread out and tumble inside the body, destroying bones, ligaments, and arteries so badly that the limbs couldn't be saved. They also knew that if you operated within 24 hours, depending on where it was on the limb, the patient had about a 75% chance of surviving. You wait 48 hours and their chances went 50-50. Anything longer than 3 days, sepsis almost always set in and they would die. In fact, though it was a rather brutal surgery, 75% of those who underwent it survived the course of the war, as did Meredith Winstead. He lived to a ripe old age and is buried here at Mount Hope Cemetery in Franklin, Tennessee.
Thank you, Thomas, for that walking tour of our city's history. Switching gears now, Arbor Day is coming up and Pinkerton Park will be the place to be on April the 5th. City Arborist Todd Snackenberg has a preview.
I'm out here at Pinkerton Park, which is going to be the site of our 10th annual Arbor Day celebration. And with that, we're going to have some great events, some activities that you can all participate in. We're going to have our zip line that is run by AdventureWorks and Davy Tree. They'll be out here for the second year in a row. Also, we're going to have master tree climber Tim Kovar, and he's going to set up some ropes and saddles and trees where people can get in and you can kind of get a feel for how how tree climbing is going to go. And we've got Middle Tennessee Electric. They'll be out here barbecuing hot dogs. They'll have free water. And we'll also have some kids activities, some different things to do. And we're also going to be getting our Tree City designation. And with that comes more free tree saplings. We're going to have some species of oak and also some black gum to give away. Everything that'll be out here will be free, so we invite everybody to come out and participate. It's going to be Saturday, April 5th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Hope to see you out here.
Thank you, Todd. We hope to see you there on April the 5th, so go ahead and mark your calendars. Well, that does it for this edition of A Walk in the Park. Until next time, I'm Paige Cruz. Thank you so much for joining us. Now go out and enjoy our parks.